What I've been trying to do in this workshop is to help leaders focus on the things that have the biggest payoff for students. So there's lots of things that people can do to raise educational achievement, but not all of them are possible to implement. Some of them are more expensive than others, and not all of them will have the same impact on student achievement. And when we go through the research evidence, what we find is the two things that have the biggest impact on student achievement are paying attention to the curriculum and improving teacher capacity in terms of classroom pedagogy and in particular formative assessment. So in terms of curriculum, what we're learning is that our design of curriculum needs to be driven by what we're learning about how human memory works, and in particular, what kinds of things, what kinds of experiences maximize the chances of students memorizing things. And the work of Robert Bjork and others has shown that what we need is little and often rather than big chunks. So we need a spiral curriculum that revisits the same topics very frequently. And then we need to think about how we design our curriculum at the macro level. So what I've been suggesting is the curriculum needs to be balanced. We need a balance between the things that are in this national curriculum and other things that students need to learn. Some of them are academic, like media studies, but some of them are more personal qualities, like resilience. The curriculum needs to be rigorous, needs to reflect what we know about disciplines. So in mathematics, we need rigorously mathematical curriculum. It needs to be coherent, it needs to be vertically integrated, it needs to be appropriate to the needs of the students, it needs to be relevant to their interests, and it also needs to be parsimonious because there's just too much stuff to teach. And so what I've been trying to do in this workshop is to give people tools for thinking about a curriculum. These tools then can allow us to make informed choices. There's no perfect curriculum. There's never going to be a perfect curriculum. Every curriculum is going to involve trade-offs. And the important thing is, are the trade-offs that we're making the ones we want to make, rather than the ones we're just making because it seemed convenient at the time? So these tools for thinking, if you like, are helping us make decisions about what kinds of curriculum we want, how to design curriculum. And it also helps us address this issue of 21st century skills. So there's great interest these days in these so-called 21st century skills of communication, collaboration, critical thinking, creativity, and problem solving. And there's no doubt these things are important. But what we're discovering is that these skills are not transferable. So in other words, no amount of training students to think critically in history has any impact on their ability to think critically in mathematics. So these so-called 21st century skills are much better thought of as audit tools for checking our curriculum is sufficiently broad in each subject, rather than actually things that we can transfer from one subject to the other. The other innovation or reform that has the biggest impact on student achievement is what is sometimes called assessment for learning, sometimes called formative assessment. But really it's about paying attention to what is going on in students' heads when we're teaching. So in schools all over the world today, there are teachers trying to find out what's going on in their children's heads, asking them questions. Students raise their hands. Teacher will pick one of those students. And if that student responds correctly, the teacher is very likely to say, good, and move on. In other words, the teacher is making a decision about the learning needs of a diverse group of 30 students based on the responses of one or two confident individuals. So what I'm suggesting is that if teachers get better evidence about what's happening in students' heads, they'll make better decisions, and therefore the learning activities in the classroom will be more appropriate for those learners. Better evidence, better decisions, better learning. It's as simple as that. Of course, when you drill down, you find it's a bit more complicated than that. So how do we do this? Well, the first process we suggest teachers pay attention to is being clear about what it is you want students to learn. Being clear about what the outcomes are, and then getting evidence about whether students are learning that. So eliciting evidence of achievement, and then feeding back appropriately. The fourth criterion is activating students as learning resources for one another. So students helping each other. And the last one is activating students as owners of their own learning. And in many ways, this last one is the most important. What we see as being really vital to helping students become really effective learners is helping them manage their own learning better. What psychologists call becoming a regulating learning. Because if students know when they're learning and when they're not learning, if students know what kinds of things are good for their own learning, they'll make better decisions when there isn't anybody else around to help them. And the really powerful thing is, what the research shows is that when teachers pay attention to curriculum and to formative assessment, really substantial improvements in student achievement are possible. So a recent evaluation of the SSAT's embedding formative assessment program, conducted by the National Institute for Economic and Social Research, a randomized controlled trial in 140 secondary schools in England, found that when schools gave teachers just 75 minutes once a month to pay attention to how they're developing their own classroom formative assessment procedures, the rate of achievement increased by 25%. In other words, these kids learned 25% faster on their GCSE courses than teachers in similar schools who were not given that same time. So that's why we know that paying attention to classroom formative assessment and to the curriculum are the two most powerful levers for improving student achievement in schools.